Now, this next question, how do you see society's views as far as fatherhood in today's culture? And when I say today's culture, I mean like the movies, the film, entertainment, music. How do you see society when they look at the father? Like, how do you feel that, I guess, they're portrayed or characterized, if you will, in today's culture? What are your thoughts on that? And I got a couple of quotes to kind of add fuel to the fire. I remember, because my generation, of course, was like Biggie, Pac, Eminem. And I remember a lyric Biggie did in the song, The What, where he was saying, ready to die, why I act that way. Pop Duke left Mom Dukes, took the back way. And he was saying that because his father left his mother, he was ready to die. He had anger or resentment. Tupac and Dear Mama, which was an ode to his mother. But he was saying, ain't nobody tell us it was fair, no love for my daddy because the coward wasn't there. He left me alone and I didn't cry because my anger wouldn't let me feel for a stranger. You say, yeah. When he said, he passed away and I didn't cry because my anger wouldn't let me feel for a stranger. So you had Pac, who had a bitterness, and this was portrayed in media, and children heard this around the world. And even down to like Eminem, when he said, by the way, when you see my dad, tell him I slit his throat in a dream that I had. So you have this anger or resentment that a lot of these lyricists may have felt. There may be portrayals on television of these things. How do you see society's views on that, and how has it affected our modern culture?
What you were just talking about as far as how they're portrayed, I'm not quite sure exactly because I don't watch a lot of TV like that. But I will say that I read an article recently about how population is decreasing. So I also know that, like, for example, my son, my 19-year-old son, he says, Dad, I don't want to really be a father. And it makes me think about, I bet a lot of this younger generation, they're not thinking about being a father. That was one of the things for my life that was going to really make my life, was that I wanted a family, a wife that loves me, and have these children that I bring up and love me back. That was one of my major goals in life, actually. So when I think about this younger generation, maybe there's a shift here of how they're thinking, and they're not really thinking about fatherhood at all.
Yeah, it's a shift in values. It makes sense.
Yeah.
I would agree with Frank. First of all, I don't watch a whole lot of TV, but I have been binge watching this one show because we kind of know one of the persons in the show, but or know of the person. But in that show, the father or parents, period, are just completely disrespected. I mean, disrespected. And I think that that's the way Hollywood is, or our TV or whatever. It's portraying, the whole relationship of family. It's out of order in that sense that there is no disrespect. There is no boundary between the parent and the children anymore. Right. And I think that technology has added to that now, because there was a time when you would go to your parents for information, but now you don't go, or children aren't going. They'll just Google it and get it. And then, and then they'll come and tell you. So I think that society is not embracing fatherhood. And I would even question if we're doing a good job of it. And I'll bring this part in the church. I don't know if we're encouraging our singles to really, get yourself steadfast and get you a wife, get you a wife for the male, so that you can have a family and be that father and raise your family. We just see a lot of embracing of, this relationship, unmarried people. And I think there's a shift in the way we're seeing fatherhood negatively.
All right. Interesting. Very interesting.
I would just add that, obviously having the absence of a father makes a difference. The family unit is important, and it's crucial because you learn as a child from both parents. And so that's why you did have the artists such as Biggie, and you had Tupac, who expressed their anger, rightfully so, because when when a child grows up without a parent, they a lot of times internalize it and they think there's something wrong with them. Or they look at it as the parent abandoned them, and it could have just been the relationship. It could have been the woman. It could have, lots of many different reasons it could have been. But as a child, they're going to internalize that. And what is going to come of that if they are not talking about it and expressing their feelings, other than the fact that anger and that resentment. So I think that is still, unfortunately, being perpetuated today in the breakdown of the families. I did realize that the population is shrinking. I did a little bit of research on that and noticed that a lot of people, if they aren't choosing to have children later in life, they're choosing to not have children at all. Which is really quite interesting. And so that, will play an important part of our society as time goes on and in the future. If we have less fathers we will see more of that anger and that frustration that was perpetuated in those lyrics and so many others. If you listen to other artists as they're expressing themselves, we'll see more of that. We definitely need fathers just as much as we need mothers. But we also need to be able to express what that's like when we have less, when we have a society that has less fathers.
No, that's true. I appreciate the comments on that. And just as you were saying it, I was thinking along the lines of, even with the music, and we mentioned like the television series that Anita mentioned, that the parents were disrespected. And that was one of the studies that I was looking at, the TV dad, and how society has changed the view from the TV dad to where, like, when you watch like Leave It to Beaver, My Three Sons and all those, the dad would sit around with a newspaper, and, a little pipe, and the mom would come and he would pat the kids on the head and sit in his favorite chair. But then we went through a time period where it was no longer, those kind of a fathers, but it kind of transitioned to where you had these, I guess like the Fred Flintstone syndrome, where the fathers were kind of brunt of the joke and they kind of became, clownish almost. We had shows like Good Times where you were scared of James, but by the time you get to like the Jeffersons or some of these other shows, they kind of started to kind of veer a different direction. And with the exception of maybe like the Cosby Show, a lot of the dads that were portrayed were dumbed down. Like when you look at shows like Home Improvement, the dad is kind of a doofus and the mom always fixes the issue. Or like Homer Simpson. When the Simpsons came on the scene in the 80s, Homer's primary objective was to choke Bart. And it was to, almost wreck the car and never know what's going on. Even though that was a cartoon. I mean, Jimmy Neutron was a cartoon. But if you look at like shows like Malcolm in the Middle or Married with Children with Al Bundy, it became a thing where disrespecting the dad and clowning on him and him not really knowing. I mean, even down to Fresh Prince, as much as I love the shows, Uncle Phil was kind of the brunt of all the jokes for a good amount of time till it was time for him to man up and kind of handle things. So I do believe that society has kind of lost its way a little bit. And maybe that's why people don't even want to be fathers, because like, I don't want to be talked about. I definitely don't want to be the deadbeat dad everybody clowns on. I just rather not even have kids, and it's too wild out here. And one of the things I looked at when I was doing my research for this, in 2007, Verizon had an ad that ultimately got banned because it showed the father is clueless. He was trying to help his daughter, say he was helping her with the homework, and he couldn't even wash the dog right. And men began to protest. I mean, they got angry because they were saying, man, you're portraying us like we are not able to communicate with our children. You know what I mean? And then in 2012, Huggies had an ad where basically they said, we're going to give you the ultimate dad test. Can you survive changing a diaper, being alone with your child? And there were men who were highly offended because they were like, what you trying to say? I can't change a diaper? I mean, I can't. And I know that society may have seen in the past a lot of fathers who weren't engaged, but as time progressed, getting in touch with your sensitive side or having an understanding of how to bond with the children did start to kind of resonate with some fathers.